Chief Executive Officer of the successful global multimedia corporation, Playboy Enterprises. She's widely credited for reinventing Playboy at a time when the multi-channel universe was just beginning to emerge. She led the way onto the internet in 1994 when Playboy became the first national magazine on the web. Playboy.com today is a multiple revenue business with e-commerce, subscriptions, advertising, and online gaming. It's the company's fastest growing profit center. Our guest has built on that successful transformation to evolve her company into an international media and entertainment giant. Playboy is now distributed through online and mobile platforms in more than 35 countries. Most recently, they've launched a social networking site geared towards college students. Now, in addition to being a prominent chief executive and a very successful marketer, she's also a passionate advocate for freedom of expression, social justice, and equal rights and opportunities for women. She serves on numerous civic, industry, and charitable boards, including the board of directors of the Magazine Publishers Association. And I'm also very proud to say that she served on the board of the directors of the Direct Marketing Association from 1987 to 1989. Let's take a look at one remarkable career in marketing.
In 1988, Christie was elected chairman of the board. Yet to this day, her proudest achievement just might be that the Playboy brand is now recognized throughout the world as a symbol of freedom.
Playboy is not just an American icon, it also stands for personal freedom, sexual freedom, the right to dissent, the right to poke fun at, and having that in areas of the world like Eastern Europe or Russia or Far East strengthens the brand because it just gives it that kind of power.
From Playboy.com, which was the first national magazine to stake a claim on the World Wide Web, to the Playboy Club Las Vegas at the Palms, Christie has worked hard to keep the company in a league of its own.
I once said to Malcolm Forbes, if you publish the capitalist tool, we publish the capitalist carrot. And I think that that's an unchanging franchise.
In acknowledgement of Christie's many achievements, Forbes magazine recognized her as one of America's 100 most powerful women.
I think that there's a pride in a family company about the quality of what you do that's very special. And over the long haul, Playboy's ability to sustain this unique niche in multimedia under the Playboy brand has been in part because of the attention to quality and detail that starts with my father.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Playboy Enterprises Chairman and CEO, Christie Hefner.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, John, for that gracious introduction. And as John alluded to, it's a pleasure to be here with you because I have a real sense of connection to the industry and the association. I sit today on the executive committee and the PAC committee for the Magazine Publishers Association, and we are frequently, as I know you're aware, allied in our interests, whether they are in Washington or with consumers. I'm also a strong believer that the expertise and mind side of the direct marketing industry is critical to all marketers in moving ahead. In fact, from my vantage point, the two things that will distinguish great, successful marketing companies going forward is one, sort of a strong brand connection to consumers, and two, a direct marketing, targeted marketing, personalization in the approach to consumers. So I start from a perspective that those of you in this hall are actually well situated to navigate the challenges in the coming years and to build on your expertise in an ever-evolving multi-channel marketing environment. Now, we at Playboy have thought of marketing both from a brand perspective and from a direct marketing perspective for many years. And part of how we've tried to evolve is to create the world of Playboy with as many touch points as possible. So just to give you sort of a little sample of what that might mean as we're here in Las Vegas, you could have, as opposed to where you did, stayed last night in the Hugh and Hefner Sky Villa at the Palms Tower. Now, this would have cost you $40,000 a night, so you hopefully were lucky at craps last night. Then, before getting up in the morning, you could have taken a little dip in this cantilevered indoor-outdoor pool at the Playboy Villa. Then you might have splashed on some of our new Playboy fragrances if you're a man, or tried some of our new Playboy cosmetics if you're a woman. Then you could have tuned in to Playboy on Sirius Radio to get an update on what's new and important that's going on in the world and the world of Playboy. You could have used your mobile phone to check in with both Playboy content and other content you were interested in. You could have stopped by either our Playboy store at the Palms or our even bigger store at the Forum to pick up some gifts for the people as you go home. Then if you had a little time in the afternoon, you could have gone to a movie theater to see the hot comedy House Bunny. Or if you were feeling a little bit lagging, you could have drank a little bit of the Playboy energy drink. And then late in the evening, you could have gone to the Playboy Casino Lounge at the Palms to win the money to stay at the Hugh and Hefner Sky Villa. And back at the Sky Villa, of course, you could have enjoyed either Playboy TV or Girls Next Door, the highest rated show on the E! Channel, or gone online to shop for other gifts to bring home, and of course enjoy reading Playboy magazine. So our whole approach has been to create these touch points around the Playboy brand. Now, I believe the Playboy brand is unique, but I also think some of what we've learned in our ability to evolve from a successful magazine franchise to a successful international brand can provide some ideas and maybe lessons learned that will be relevant to you all as you think about your businesses. And that's what I'd like to kind of focus on today. So in the beginning was a word and were some pictures. And part of what the idea from the beginning was that, like many great magazines, Playboy was going to represent not just a series of articles, but a point of view about the world. And in the case of Playboy, that was a view that celebrated life, that broke with the conformity of the early 1950s, that had a sense of play and pleasure and fun, but that went hand in hand with serious ideas about what would make the world a better place, and a serious commitment to personal freedom. So from the beginning, it was a combination of a platform for ideas, but also a lifestyle. And that was very much reflected in the mix of content in the magazine, which was high quality editorial, whether the Playboy interview, great writers like Norman Mailer, famous celebrities, in this case Barbie Benton. And that mix from almost the beginning became extraordinarily successful. So, for example, Braden Carter, editor-in-chief of Vanity Fair, wrote last year that, quote, "It would be tough to overstate the greatness of a magazine that had Marilyn Monroe as its first centerfold and Kerouac, Steinbeck, and Wodehouse on call by its 5th anniversary, whose table of contents is a veritable who's who of the best writers of the day and their most compelling subjects, including the signature Playboy interviews, which deliver the kind of no-holds-barred ranting and raving that made it famous." And what that allowed the magazine to become was what it remains today on the eve of its 55th anniversary, which is the best-selling magazine in the U.S. and in the world. But the company also was started by an entrepreneur, and from my experience with the DMA and the NPA, these are industries that have been propelled by great entrepreneurs. I actually think the magazine business is the most personal form of mass communication. So whether it's Jan Wenner in Rolling Stone, or Henry Luce in Time, or Gloria Steinem and Ms., or Hugh Hefner in Playboy, often great magazines reflect an individual entrepreneur's passion and point of view. And if they're successful, it's because at the right moment in time, executed just the right way, those ideas and that passion kind of catch hold. And certainly I think that was true for Playboy. But I think it was also true that there was a sense from the beginning that this magazine was more than a magazine, that it could be a brand. And so from the very beginning, whether it was the Playboy clubs or Playboy After Dark, and this is a shot from that TV show in the 60s, the idea of sort of bringing the brand to life, or extending the brand into other media, if you will, was something that the company experimented with. And this show, which was really the original quality adult variety show, could feature performances from the Grateful Dead to Tony Bennett and interviews from Lenny Bruce to the documentary filmmakers of Woodstock, but also intrinsically represented some of the values of Playboy. It was the first syndicated show that had an integrated cast and integrated performers, and indeed was not carried by stations in the South because of that. So there was always kind of the underlying values and ideas that the magazine represented when, for example, it would interview Miles Davis or publish Roots before it became a book or a mini-series, integrated with the entertainment. And I think part of what we're always trying to do is to make our brand stand for something that isn't just the fact that it's recognized. I actually have a point of view about brands that is a little different than others, in that I don't think that every popular product is automatically a brand. So, for example, I would argue that Virgin Airlines is a brand, American Airlines is an airline. Nike is a brand, Reebok is a shoe company. What are the differences? The differences are a brand is something that reflects a point of view or an attitude, and as such it can be translated from one product to another because consumers seek it out as a way of self-identifying with that attitude. And that was very much important in Playboy's evolution because it allowed us to take this idea of Playboy the brand and some of the early experimentation with things like Playboy After Dark and launch our first really successful multimedia expansion 25 years ago with Playboy TV. What we thought was possible was that in a world of 50 channels, which is what cable originally was, which now sounds like nothing, but compared to what I grew up with, which was ABC, CBS, and NBC, and maybe on that dial, if you were as adept as a safecracker, you could find a UHF channel, all of a sudden had evolved to this plethora of channels, which it struck me meant that potentially consumers would tune to channels, not just programs. That channels could become destinations, not just delivery mechanisms for programs that were destinations. And of course, if we think back to the early years of cable, that is how great new channels got launched. So our theory was the opportunity to launch Playboy TV in that environment. Now, you think about it in retrospect, and it's perhaps easy to think, well, kind of a no-brainer. I mean, Playboy is a great entertainment brand. It's always been a very visual magazine. Of course it would work as a television network. But actually, the reason it worked, and the reason we're the only magazine brand that has a television network, is because we thought differently about television than print. And this is one of the lessons that I would encourage all of you who are thinking about extending your channels of distribution to consider. That what you're looking for is not a way of simply taking the marketing message or the content from one channel and repurposing it on another, but finding the intersection between that channel of marketing or distribution and how the consumer uses it with your brand or content or marketing. So what did that mean for us? What it meant for us is if Playboy magazine is a great men's magazine, we could have decided to try and launch a men's television network. But I had a different view. My view was, think about it. Magazine reading is very personal. It's just me and my magazine. But what about television viewing? It's kind of the opposite. It's sort of a social experience, right? You're watching it with your friends, you're watching it with your spouse, you're watching it with your boyfriend or girlfriend. So what if we could create a channel that indeed was programmed to be watched by men and women together, for couples, as opposed to, let's say, a bunch of lonely guys? That might be a bigger business. And so we set out with that intention in mind. We also recognize that a magazine can be paced by the reader. So the reader picks up Playboy and says, now I want to read the interview with Matt Damon, now I want to look at the pictures of Cindy Crawford. Now I want to read the piece on the hot new cars. But television, which is a push medium, means that the moment that the consumer clicks on your channel is the moment you either engage them or they move away. So we thought that what that meant for us is that we had to kind of compress what the brand would mean in television and make it kind of quality, sexy entertainment all the time. So the investigative journalism and the long-form fiction and things that work wonderfully in the random access medium of magazines would not work so well in television. So we set out from the beginning to program Playboy TV differently than we set out to program Playboy magazine, and as a consequence wound up with a channel that is in 70 countries, that is watched primarily by couples, and that we create almost all of the content for ourselves, which became very valuable as new media, like online and mobile, began to create other platforms for distribution of that content. And just to go back to my point about, well, how hard was it to do? If it was easy to do, then the channel that your kids watch would be called Rolling Stone, not MTV. And the channel that my husband loves best would be called Sports Illustrated, not ESPN. And my favorite news channel would be called Time, not CNN. So it's not so easy to do, even with great brands that start in one medium, in part because the inclination is to take the same content and also sometimes even the same staff and just move them over into the other medium, as opposed to finding a way to kind of create an intersection between the brand and each new medium. So with that lesson learned, we were, as John alluded to, very excited about the possibility of what the World Wide Web might represent, and had been experimenting with what was then called new media. So I had done a series of deals. I did a deal with IBM to take the Playboy interviews, not just the text, but audio and photographic, and create a CD-ROM that was searchable by subject, so you could type in religion or sex and find out what every Playboy interviewee over all of those decades had to say on that subject. And we've done a CDI project with Philips that used some wonderful video we'd shot on sensual massage that was a sort of informational entertainment project, all of which was designed to help us learn how to create compelling content in a multimedia world. Now, I have to say that one of our ways of looking at new media opportunities, and I think this is maybe true of new business opportunities, is to be creatively a risk taker but financially conservative. I'm sure you've heard the expression, don't bet the ranch. In my company, that really comes down to don't bet the mansion. We don't ever want to make an investment decision that if it doesn't work out, I have to pick up the phone and call my father and say, I found a lovely 2-bedroom apartment in Westwood for you. But it means that look for ways to, partner, look for ways to capitalize on other people's money, particularly people who themselves want to drive distribution of technologies and understand that it's content that will do that and take creative risks. So we've been doing that before the internet itself became kind of an interesting opportunity. And then another sort of learning of mine has always been to be out and about. Go to conferences like this. Go places where you will listen to people and meet people, to have your antenna out. And at just such a conference in the early 90s, I had the chance to listen to and meet a gentleman named Jim Clark. Jim Clark was the founder of a company then called Mosaic, which became Netscape, which was one of the companies that really revolutionized the World Wide Web into something that was a consumer medium. And at the time, in the early 90s, what publishing companies were doing were making deals with people like AOL and Prodigy and CompuServe to license their content and brands to be put up online as part of these bigger ISPs. I hesitated to do that because I felt if there really was a business in bringing the world of Playboy online, then how could we really realize that if we neither had creative control nor commercial control? But I had no idea that there was any other way to sort of provide access to Playboy content online without going through one of those other companies. And in meeting Jim Clark, we started talking, and he immediately said to me, "Oh, Playboy, internet, it's a natural." So I explained what I didn't want to do, and he said to me, "Well, I can build a system where people can simply type in Playboy and they'll be on your site." Now, when I say that to you in the year 2008, that probably sounds as revolutionary as if I said to you, "I have this little device in my purse backstage and I can call my husband in Chicago and it's amazing." But in 1992, let me tell you, that was amazing. Anyway, we partnered with Jim Clark, and our whole premise was, if we build it, will they come? And the answer was yes, and from those early beginnings, we launched Playboy.com with a view that, again, just as we did with television, we would not just take content from the magazine and put it online, but try and figure out what was the difference between the consumer in the online space and the consumer in television or consumer in a magazine. And of course, what we learned is what, by now everybody understands, which is things like the need to refresh the content daily, the opportunity and indeed imperative of making the content interactive. So for example, if one of the storied franchises of Playboy the magazine is the Playmate of the Month and the Playmate of the Year, and those are chosen ultimately by the editors and my father, this gave us a chance to have a different approach that was a kind of a democratic American Idol style approach to choosing a cyber girl every month. It gave us a chance to do interactive polls. It gave us a chance to publish pieces that would have been no longer timely if we waited for the monthly magazine. And, back to my TV example, let us go back to the breadth of Playboy content because, like a magazine, the consumer is the editor online and decides whether or not they want information on travel or on sports or a Q&A with somebody who's in the news. And it allowed us to start experimenting with what would be the revenue model. And from the beginning, our idea was it was a multi-revenue stream model in which we could sell content because Playboy-style content on TV like HBO and of course through the magazine is content that A, is age verified, and B, is the kind of content people will pay for. One of the things we learned is that there was no pricing relationship between the magazine and online. So we could sell Playboy Cyber Club for $19.99 a month when you would pay $19.99 for a year of Playboy magazine. So we tried to be open to learning what the consumer would tell us and be willing to constantly evolve. Because this is, I think, the most important lesson for me about the internet, more than print and more than television, is because it is driven by new technologies and by the adaptation of those technologies by consumers, sometimes in ways unforeseen. Remember, the last election, last presidential election, there was no YouTube and there was no Facebook. That's how new those technologies are and those companies are. It's really critical in this space to create a culture of innovation that is sort of the antithesis of, kind of we're going to build the house and then maybe in 5 years or 10 years go back and think about refreshing it or adding another wing. And so as John mentioned, we've been trying to embrace the opportunity to do new content and experiences that would capitalize on where consumers are leading us as well as where technologies allow us to go. So we did launch Playboy U, this social networking site. We are moving towards even more user-generated content and having a mix of the voice of authority of the brand with our consumers commenting. So, for example, the fashion editor does a piece on back to campus fashions, a long franchise in the magazine. But now at Playboy.com, our universe of 7 million unique visitors a month submit their photographs of what's the cool look on their campus, what are the best stores to shop at, how they feel about the trends. The magazine editors publish a piece on, if you're in Miami, what's the best sports bar, what's the best dance club, what's the best steak place. Our consumers online can talk about that among themselves and back and forth with the editors. So what we're trying to do is not just have a site that generates a new way of distributing content, but embracing new ways of using technology. So another example of that is launching Playboy Digital, which we do with a company called Zinio, that some of you may know. So this is literally the magazine that you would buy on the newsstand, but delivered downloadable on your computer in ways that are searchable and bookmarkable and allows you to interact with it, including having both in the editorial and in the advertising embedded video. And at this point, for us and for other publishers, I would say that it's not a big business, but it is a growing business. And given that the delivery of the magazine this way is 75% less expensive for us than through the mail, it's a pretty intriguing business. So we're looking to embrace new technologies and also new trends. This is that would be the house money that I mentioned in my little opening. But I'm showing it to you because one of the other trends that we've been taking advantage of is the kind of integration of e-commerce with content. So this is just a screen grab of the fact that on our site, you can connect to the opportunity to buy products, whether it's the rabbit head diamond necklace or other products that are showcased in the movie or that Anna Faris wears in the movie. So we're trying to capitalize on moving away from the silos of product, content, and advertising to have a more integrated experience. And yet at the same time, we're also recognizing what our core competencies are. So we recently outsourced both our catalog and e-commerce business to a very good company called eFashion Solutions, because we believed that while from a marketing perspective, we very much wanted to be in control of the consumer interface, from a kind of infrastructure perspective, we could do better with a company that was its core competence. And it also allows us to create multiple communities of interest. So we might have a community of interest around fans of the House Bunny or fans of the Girls Next Door on our website, but we also would have a community of interest around the Playboy Forum, which is kind of the political part of the magazine, or the college experience with Playboy U. So back to my comment up front, that target marketing orientation that is at the heart of direct marketing is a great asset when you apply it to the web, and particularly to the notion that increasingly a lot of what's going to happen online and through mobile is going to be kind of pull technology. We also have evolved from silos of marketing to integrated marketing. So on the consumer side, we now bundle together subscription to the magazine and subscription to Playboy Cyber Club, where in the early days, we would, market them kind of separately. So today we now have a file of 7.5 million customers that we can market to and that we're always looking to expand. And on the advertising side, we have an integrated ad sales team. So in the dot-com bubble days, I'd say 80% of the ads that ran on Playboy.com were from other dot-com companies. They were the same companies that were buying those Super Bowl ads in that heyday of the dot-com run-up. Today, 80% of the ads that run on Playboy.com are the same companies that are also advertising in Playboy in print. And indeed, most of our packages of advertising partnerships include print, online, and some kind of sponsorship or event. So our mantra, in a world in which consumers are getting more content online than in print, in which advertisers are spending more money online than in print in terms of trends, is to grow our total audience and our total ad sales. So last year, between Playboy in print and Playboy online, just in the US, we grew total audience 9%, total ad sales 10%. So we're, for all intents and purposes, kind of ecumenical about how people access our content and how we can monetize that. What we want to do is just build the business overall. And we do that also in another way that has changed over time. In the early days of online, a lot of people embraced kind of what was called a walled garden approach. So you would build a site and your goal would be to keep people on your site. You never wanted them to leave your site. Now, honestly, I think the best marketers are embracing almost the antithesis of that philosophy. So what we've dubbed our approach in that regard is the Playboy Audience Network, PAN. And the point of that is we want to have our content on other people's sites because we want other people who are on those sites to experience our content and then come back to our site. So we launched the Playboy channel on YouTube. Our Playmates have pages on Facebook. We have a relationship with Break.com. We're looking to take original content and our brand and seed it, S-E-E-D, seed it out in all the places on the web where people will go. A lot of our product is available on eBay, for example. So that notion in the past of other sites somehow being your competitors, I think is just really not true. I think now those other sites are your assets, are your allies. So when we wanted to do a Playboy casting call for models, we deliberately took it out to YouTube so that we could be out in front of more and different consumers, as well as the consumers that come to Playboy.com. So the last sort of lesson learned then is this importance of the rate of change, which is the sort of morph swiftly, the kind of exponential change, along with the idea of interactivity and the growth of advertising from banners to video, along with trying to integrate online in a way in which we see it almost as the glue between the two-dimensional parts of our company, like the magazine and television, and the three-dimensional parts of our company, like events and location-based entertainment and Playboy stores. And we're very committed to extending that into the mobile space. So because we're international, we have 24 editions of the magazine around the world, which are 80% local content, whether that's in Brazil or Poland. We saw the adaptation of mobile devices for entertainment much earlier than if we had just been looking at the US market. So we've actually been in this business for 6 years. It's a very profitable business. We create all kinds of content from games and gaming to audio, like we have a really fun service where you can set it up and there's a way that you can program your phone so if you're on a bad date you get a phone call from somebody to get out of the date, to video downloads, to information about if you're in a new town, where to access kind of what's cool and what's hot. So we're big believers in this, and it's particularly important, even though the U.S. is way behind Europe and Asia, for all of you to think about, because the millennial generation, which is I think usually considered like 13 to 21-year-olds, 70% of them believe that their handheld phone or handheld mobile device is an entertainment device. So even though a lot of us might have trouble imagining that third screen as really being an entertainment screen because of its size, although look at the iPhone screen, it's a pretty beautiful, actually, reproduction of quality video. Clearly the generation that is growing up is going to look to access that. And that creates marketing opportunities as well as content opportunities. We did a Miss Playboy Mobile contest deliberately to drive people to vote online, to vote via their mobile devices, specifically because we're looking to start to encourage people to think about mobile and our brand as being connected. So even though if you're US-centric, it's not a big business here as it is in Europe and Asia, it's a business we're thinking about getting involved in as a marketing company, thinking about what brands or sites or content might marry with your messaging, and begin to experiment with it because it is the natural extension of the kind of personalized target marketing that is your lifeblood. So the last point I want to make is that I've talked a lot about sort of what I'll call high tech, but I'm a big believer in something that John Nesbitt wrote about many years ago, which is in a world that is increasingly high tech, high touch has even more value. So my small example of why that's true is in a world in which email is ubiquitous, the handwritten thank you note has more meaning than ever before. So from a business perspective, what that means for us is bringing the brand to life, the way Disney does with its theme parks. So we do that through events, with a college marketing organization, through concerts and promotions that allow us to integrate advertiser interests with consumer interests with the brand, to marketing that both brings in new consumers, allows us to cross-market our other businesses, and kind of creates brand ambassadors. And then, as I say, sort of creates this more valuable experiential marketing in the digital age that extends itself to everything from our jazz festival to our golf tournament to the Playboy Project at the Palms. And our Palms experiment, which is now almost 2 years old and has been a huge success, has encouraged us to move in this direction of not small Playboy clubs, but big entertainment venues that integrate gaming and nightclub and restaurant and dance and retail. So we're actually building in Macau right now. That's a not very good rendering, but it's the best I have. And we'll be opening probably the end of 09, early 010, what will be a bigger Playboy Mansion Macau project as part of a 30-acre project that will have hotels and retail and gaming, and we're kind of the cool nightlife brand. So the whole point of this is to think about both the media piece and the kind of, if you will, high-touch piece, because at the end of the day, that ability to kind of interrelate in both, and this is a promotion that we did with Captain Morgan, gives great opportunities to our marketing partners. In this case, there was a contest, and this was the winner of the contest who went to a party that was tied into advertising. But it also, and more important than ever, keeps us front of mind with consumers. So what is the most important scorecard for us is to continue to reach more customers through more channels, and of course do that in more countries. And to make sure that each channel reflects the unique Playboy heritage, new generation, not just for its original generation. And the fact is that we have been able to create a brand that, in a world in which many brands are in decline, many brands and magazines have gone out of business, the brand reaches more people, more countries than at any other time in its history. I think the heart of our success was the original genius of my father, but it also really has been the creativity of the team that over all of these decades has kept evolving that original concept, both in terms of keeping the content relevant, keeping our finger on the pulse of the consumer and the marketplace, and giving ourselves permission to constantly evolve and stay true to the quality and sophistication of the brand while being innovative. This is an approach I really believe that in its own way each of you can embrace, and I would encourage you, as I said earlier, to be fiscally careful but creatively risky. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christie. Your insight and leadership are inspiring to all of us, and we truly admire the tremendous contributions you've made to publishing and direct marketing over the years. You've earned the gratitude and admiration of a highly appreciated marketing community, so thank you very much for coming today. I want to remind everyone that this year's exhibit hall is our best ever. The floor is open, and there's a lot to see and explore. Don't miss the mobile marketing hotspot if you haven't been there yet. We have a great collection of ideas, solutions, and services from absolutely top-flight companies who have all worked very, very hard to make themselves and their resources available for your inspection. So you have until 5 p.m. tonight to make sure you've seen everything on that floor. I recommend you try to cover every inch of the floor to make sure you don't miss a thing. Tonight, the International Echo Awards Gala at the Bellagio is completely sold out. With Jay Leno as host, it should be a memorable evening for everyone. Now, if you've missed the chance to sign up for this gala event, you're going to be glad to know that Jay will be hosting the Echoes again next year at DMA 09 in San Diego. So submit your best work, and Jay and I will see you at San Diego. Tomorrow's general session will have an online interactive focus as we hear from the founder of Craigslist, Craig Dumar. So you won't want to miss that. In the meantime, take advantage of everything that DMA 08 and Las Vegas have to offer. Thank you for coming this morning, and I will see you all later. The DMA Marketer of the Year Award honors either a company or an individual for outstanding achievements in the multi-channel direct marketing process. Direct marketing in the overall marketing process. Now that's a trend that's playing out in every industry. Our committee of judges examined marketing innovation, marketplace results, and direct response impact, including the impact of corporate responsibility. They look for new concepts and methods for optimally communicating with customers, getting them to respond, and of course, retaining them. Above all else, they looked for outside-of-the-box thinking. I am very proud to announce this year's DMA Marketer of the Year is eBay. Well, it's very clear that eBay has added an entirely new dimension to the power of direct. Buyers can find highly relevant offers, and they can respond directly. eBay goes to great lengths to ensure responsible transactions, and there can be no doubt about the measurable results eBay has achieved since back in 1995. Today, eBay is a marketing powerhouse built on its unique position in online auction. They're pushing the frontiers online for display advertising and managing and optimizing paid and natural search. eBay, together with PayPal and a variety of other new technologies, has really changed the face of internet commerce. They have made it possible for people to trust one another in online transactions, which we as direct marketers recognize as really essential to a successful marketplace. Much like DMA, eBay places great emphasis on community. They've created new online marketplaces such as World of Good, featuring products with a positive impact on people and the planet. I'm very pleased to introduce Jed Paulson, eBay Senior Manager of Marketing Technology.
For a second, I was worried I was going to have to hold the statue while I gave this speech, and it was kind of a heavy one, so I thought it might weigh me down. Hope you're all having a great time in Las Vegas. I know I am. Hope you're staying successful at the tables. I am more or less doing that. On behalf of eBay, it's my pleasure to accept this award for Marketer of the Year. And I would like to thank the Direct Marketing Association and the Selection Committee for their time and careful consideration in this honor. As each of you know, the DMA is a tremendous organization with over 90 years of history, and my colleagues and I have often turned to for advice and best practices in the marketing space. Thus, it's wonderful that the DMA is returning the favor and recognizing us for our innovation and marketing leadership. I spent a good portion of yesterday walking through the exhibit hall and meeting you, learning about your companies, visiting some friends from the tables that took my money the night before, and then learning more about this multifaceted industry. And I can tell you, I'm proud to be among this fantastic group of business leaders, and I'm proud to be associated with you all. The video clip you just watched highlighted some of eBay's 2008 marketing innovations, including online display advertising, which allows our inventory to stretch across the entire internet. The eBay Partner Network, which launched in April, which rewards our 100,000 affiliates for driving traffic to eBay. And then our partnership with Microsoft, which some of you may have used already, where you search on live.com and you're rewarded with up to 30% cash back for purchasing on eBay with PayPal. If you haven't tried this yet, I recommend you check it out. It's a great deal. eBay is also committed to responsible marketing. One of the segments you saw featured a display ad with an ad choice in the lower right-hand corner. And this allows our customers to opt out of advertising across the internet with a single click. The clip also highlighted some of our socially responsible initiatives that John mentioned, including World of Good, which is a retail website for purchasing environmentally friendly, people-friendly products.